There's a lot of misrepresentation of data. There are many instances where companies, you go on TechCrunch or you look at their press releases or Tech Cabal, whatever, and you're just like, it's not matching up. The numbers are lying. The numbers are Pinocchio. The numbers don't make sense. Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Every time I do a new video, I just have to get excited because it is so hard creating content. You guys know this. I just be giving myself a clap, pat myself on the back. So today's video is about the 5 mistakes that entrepreneurs make when they are starting a business, especially entrepreneurs of African descent, entrepreneurs who are doing business in Africa. As you guys know, I've run companies in Africa, on the continent, done business in Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa. I am of Nigerian descent, and so I'm just here to share some of my experiences, some of the things that people I know, some of the experiences that people I know have experienced, and leave a comment in the comments below if you agree. If you are an upcoming entrepreneur, you are currently an entrepreneur, let me know what you think. I want to hear your thoughts. It's meant to be a conversation, so don't be shy. Say hi. Okay, so the number one mistake that I think that African entrepreneurs make is not having the right data. Oh my god. So okay, look, data is a whole different topic and it's a very, very hard thing, but the truth is, honey, numbers don't lie. So you have to have the numbers to back up whatever business it is that you're going into. Now, it is really hard to get good data on the continent. I mean, you can definitely do Google, Wikipedia, but it's so diverse in so many different countries, areas. A lot of areas are not urban, they're rural areas, and it's just like we just don't have numbers from time to time, let's say on buying patterns or consumer purchases. There's such a huge informal economy, so a lot of what's going on the continent isn't getting tracked. So when you're a new entrepreneur, especially when you're not on the continent and you're sort of trying to get an understanding for what the flavor is, you don't know what to trust. Like, for example, this is a number that has been thrown a lot of, talking about Nigeria, for example, and it's been estimated that in the annual consumer spending in the region to reach $2.5 trillion by 2025. Cool, that's a great data point, something that you'd be like, okay kids, okay everybody, we're going back to Nigeria because we know that's the new wave. And it doesn't mean that that's not the new wave, but just some things that people don't take into consideration, things like just the fact that it's not really in Africa. Most countries don't have a sort of a consumer culture, right? When people make money and they enter the what is called middle class, a lot of that money tends to go on things like education because of the things that we value, or on wealth transfer. People care about purchasing land and then giving that property back to future generations. So they're just things about that specific to the African consumer that maybe we don't really consider. So let's just say you're going into the luxury goods market. Let's say you want to go into perfumes, right? Something that, and you may look at a lot of research and says, there are a lot of women in Kenya who have, buying power, and beauty is a huge market, or, have that happen in Ghana or Nigeria. But what you may not be thinking about is the fact, talking about the middle class women, a lot of them maybe prefer getting their products when they travel. So a lot of that money isn't actually getting spent on the continent, it's getting spent in Selfridges in London, or Macy's, or Lord & Taylor, or Bloomingdale's, whatever. So in some ways it's just like, you won't really know until you go, until you hit the streets yourself. Maybe take a sabbatical for 3 months and just talk to people and go in the informal marketplace and just learn about whatever industry you want to get into. Now, there's a lot of misrepresentation of data. There are many instances where companies will actually, you know, put out information. Oh my god, a lot of startups do this. You know, you go on TechCrunch or you look at their press releases or Tech About or whatever, and you're just like, it's not matching up. The numbers are lying. The numbers are Pinocchio. The numbers don't make sense. Now, where do you get sort of like good data, like good information? I think that a place that you can sort of get good data, good information, this is a hack that a couple of friends have told me, is, you know, look at publicly traded companies and look at the annual reports and look at a bunch of different annual reports, because this is a legal document and it usually is audited. You can usually find out more accurate information. Okay, this is another one. So interestingly enough, when I started my business, one of the things I prayed about, because I am also a Christian, a praying woman, one of the things I prayed about was having the right employees, because a lot of my mentors and people that I've looked up to in business, I've noticed that they struggle a lot with employees, right? So it's complaining, it's hard to find talent here, it's hard to find talent here, especially here. A lot of managers, bosses, CEOs don't really develop talent, you know. There's not a lot of skill building and skill transfer. People are sort of afraid, like, if I train her, right, and I teach her how to do her job, she'll do her job too well and maybe start a company that that rivals mine or whatever. But I think that, you know, what part of being an entrepreneur is creating the right atmosphere, is creating the right ecosystem. Like, having the right ecosystem is important. And yes, you may have that situation where you train someone and they go and they leave you. Yes, it may happen, but overall, it's like, you know, in the long term, what's better? Is it good to have an incompetent team? I get it, it's hard. Sometimes our legal systems, or the legal systems on the continent, don't really protect entrepreneurs and intellectual properties. You know, it's really hard to enforce NDAs and MOUs and just all things like that. So I get it, like, I get it, but I think that it's just important, you know, for you as a business person to make sure that you have a team that is very, very competent, that is able to deliver now and can deliver the vision and the future of your company. Because honestly, if you don't have a team that has your back, you're just going to end up carrying the whole weight of a company, and that's going to prevent you from growing, from scaling. And a lot of investors right now, they're not just investing in, you know, you or the idea, but they're investing in the whole machine. They're investing in sort of the people backing you up. Back it up, back it up. That's not really relevant. I think that, you know, a lot of the universities and the secondary schools are not producing the best talent. I do see a lot of really good talent come from Ghana. Hey, Ghana. And you know, pretty good in South Africa. I think a lot of people have been really successful. I haven't really had to deal with in Kenya, but in Nigeria, it's been personally really hard to find good talent. And you know, a lot of my peers have expressed a lot of frustrations finding good talent. And you know, I don't even know if you can say, okay, the public schools versus the private schools. Some people come out and they have bad writing skills, and you're like, you have a college, in, you know, a lot of these countries call it university. So you have a university degree? You really went to 4 years after high school and you can barely write an email? Another thing that I think that is very important is mentorship. I think that it can be really difficult, especially as a female, and I've talked about this before. I'm not gonna go into it. You can watch kind of like my Why I Quit Entrepreneurship video, but it's hard to find female mentors, I think, in my experience in the industry. I think that, you know, I came from the beauty industry, and it was really hard to find good mentors in the space. I think there was a lot of like competitiveness, and you know, you have to kiss me, you know, kiss my ass, and you know what I mean. And if you're not that kind of person, I was just like, I'm a creative, like I have my vision and go. But then that wasn't really the right approach either, because these women have been in the industry for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, have a lot of experience, have seen it all, and they do have something to share. and I wanted some of that information. I think for me, one of the few women who did really reach out and really help me while I was on the continent, I mean older women, was Tiffany Amber, Folake, but you know, Tiffany Amber, the brand, they had sort of like an entrepreneurship program for women. Also with L'Oreal too, I participated in the She Leads Africa L'Oreal mentorship. And She Leads Africa, I mean, the ladies who run She Leads Africa, they're young, they're like my age, you know, or you know, younger even, and they've been really supportive. So there are groups, and I know people who've been part of like things like WinBiz, and you know, have really been able to grow and connect, but you know, in general, it was a bit difficult. That's just like a personal experience thing, not the case for everyone. And so another reason why I think a lot of companies struggle on the continent is because of lack of documentation. And I just started getting into this idea of documentation really recently. I think now that I work for a startup, like seeing how they do things and how documentation is a really huge part of what you do, because you want to be able, okay, if you found success in a certain area, you want to document it, you want to document the steps. That way you're not, you know, you're not starting over again. Like you've already sort of documented the path to success or the way things are done, and that way if there's somebody else that comes after, you are able to share that information with them, and they can, you know, go on. And it goes back to that whole talent thing. If your talent goes, but you've documented the process, then it should be easier to train new talent. Another important thing about documentation, honestly, is so I know, especially in tech, right, there's a way, like you may be using a product, right, and it works fine, but is that really how the product is supposed to work? So I have this camera and I'm able to film and it looks great, but am I supposed to just be able to film at this level of, you know, clarity or whatever? Maybe it's supposed to work better, or maybe it's actually working better than we thought it was. So documentation is important because you want to be able to document how the machine is supposed to be oiled, you know what I mean, how something is supposed to go, and that way you can kind of you know, do like a QA QC, so quality check on whatever product it is that you're bringing out. And that's not just in tech. I mean, if you think of like e-commerce, for example, if you look at your delivery process, like how is your delivery process supposed to work? It's supposed to go, okay, from, you know, packing up to going to the, you know, delivery guy, and then he's supposed to deliver in 2 to 3 days. Is that happening all the time? Is that how it's been working? Or are people getting their packages 5 days later and it's busted? Or are you saying 2 to 3 days on your website, but then they're getting their packages the next day, you know? So documentation is just very important, and I think that that's something that I personally didn't know about. Just sharing with y'all. I think that's a lot of reason. I haven't heard a lot of my peers sort of talk about that they're doing that. The last one, I told you this was gonna be quick. Look at me doing a quick video. Hey. I think that, you know, one of the challenges that African entrepreneurs definitely face is the legal challenges and the political challenges. You know, if you take a country like Nigeria, for example, and you take an industry like the cosmetics industry, everyone is like, NAFDAC is a headache, NAFDAC is a headache, and NAFDAC is that body that is supposed to actually help both business owners and consumers, supposed to set standards for cosmetic products so you don't have subpar cosmetic products in the marketplace. You know, don't want your lotion to be burning you up and down. So, you know, NAFDAC is important, and people do want to, you know, I do think that responsible entrepreneurs want to be regulated by NAFDAC, but responsibly. I mean, NAFDAC should not be a bullying organization. It should be an organization that works for everyone. It shouldn't be extremely expensive that, you know, startups or new people in the industry cannot come in, cannot compete because, you know, they're charging exorbitant prices, or people don't know or there's scams in sort of the process because people don't know how it works, and then they're paying these consultants to help them, you know, approve their products. So it's just a whole bunch of stuff. So that's just one example of an area that, you know, I've experienced, and I've had people that I've worked with, clients I've worked with, people that I know experience like the NAFDAC, you know, regulatory industries, and so many, and I'm sure that's in so many different industries. I can imagine banking or, you know, oil and gas, what those people have to go through. And in addition to legal challenges, I think political challenges as well. I think every 4 years when there is a new election, no matter the country, I remember, people in Ghana when, the election time, and people were really nervous about, what's going to happen. This is, going to be a change if they do have a change in government, which they ended up having a change in government. I mean, everything went smoothly, but I remember being in Ghana at that time, and I remember just people feeling really nervous about this election. And every time there's an election in Africa, there's just an overwhelming sense of uncertainty, and uncertainty is really bad for business. Uncertainty is really bad for investors. Investors hate the uncertainty like Ebola. Okay, so as much as possible as you want to de-risk, you want to have a risk-free environment, sometimes that's when people are like, it's not even worth the headache. Like, let me just stay in these Americas and this United States of America and be following my paths, because there's definitely a lot of things to think about. Like, I worked in the oil and gas industry, well, in clean energy, but I had a lot of experience in energy in general, and a lot of folks were burnt in the energy industry from sort of like the Enron deal, the Enron power deal, the infamous Enron, Nigeria power deal. And so when you would bring up any sort of power deal in, in Houston, in the oil and gas community, people are like, don't want to hear it. Don't want to hear it. So these things do have an effect, and they have an effect for many years, and precedents are very important. And we live in a time where we're seeing a lot of FDI, foreign direct investment, on the continent. We're seeing a lot of it, especially in the tech industry. Now I have to look at the numbers. I don't know if it's more, there's more money flowing. It appears that way, because if you're reading the blogs, the tech blogs, if you're listening to tech podcasts, it feels like, oh my god, everybody's raising 5 million, 10 million, 15 million in the African tech industry. But I think that back in the day, what I remember were a lot of deals by MNCs, multinational corporations, and you're hearing less and less of that. You're hearing less, especially in a country like Nigeria, you're hearing less about people setting up factories, for example. So is that better that there's this influx of tech money, but there isn't like an influx of factory money? And what does that mean? And what does that mean for supporting, certain groups of society? Are people able to move up? Is there mobility among income levels? I'm just, just thoughtful, just food for thoughts. I don't know the answer to everything, just saying. Well, that's great that we're having all this influx of money, right, into the tech industry. But what happens if, you don't, people do invest in Africa and do sort of place bets on these, what they call unicorns, right? So like, I pray, Paystack does amazing, and I pay Yoko does amazing in South Africa, and there's so many companies that have gotten funding recently. But what if something bad happens? What if all these companies, or a lot of these companies, don't really come through? Or what if they come through but they don't, they're not ethical, or they don't really give the investors their value? Think of what that would do for future investments. If everything goes well and a lot of these companies are successful, I think that's a great thing for the ecosystem. But then when you see, sort of a rush of investors, foreign investors, then what about local investors? Maybe local investors can be doing more, or maybe local investors are doing more, but they're not getting heard. We're not hearing as much about local, that seed local investment, and all we hear is that Series A, Series B, C, D, E, F, G. These are just all things that we just all have to really think about as members of the ecosystem in the African entrepreneurship industry. Things that I spend a lot of nights not thinking about. I sleep like a baby, honey. I sleep like a baby. But yeah, so those are my five reasons why I think a lot of entrepreneurs fail on the continent. Are there others that you think I didn't talk about? I love to hear your opinions, so definitely leave a comment below. Subscribe. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I keep saying this, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Oh, by the way, follow me if you want to see my crazy side, like, is like my good girl professional side. We want to see my crazy side. Follow me on Instagram at Louisa Kenoshi, Twitter at Louisa Kenoshi. Louisa Kenoshi. What the heck is wrong with me? Love you guys. Thank you. Bye.